So Bakugo has been down and out for a good while now, but I did want to talk about his fighting potential once he's actually back up and running. I've made many videos going over how Bakugo seems to be very similar to the second user, so much so it's almost really uncanny, and I feel like this means that his explosion quirk is likely descended from the second user's gear shift quirk. With that being said, I did want to go over the different abilities that he will likely unlock once he finally taps into this sort of dormant quirk that he has inside of him that is the originator of his explosion quirk, and we're going to get right into that in the video. Before we do that though, I do want to ask everybody to like and subscribe to the channel, or you can 1v1 Bakugo himself. He might look like a donut right now, but he is still very strong, so you shouldn't underestimate him. As I've said many times before, I think Bakugo has some sort of relation to the second user, and this might play into how he actually uses his quirk moving forward into the story. We've already seen him unlock new abilities before he was taken out by Shigaraki, and this was when he used the cluster ability that sort of went throughout his whole body trying to find a way to escape since he pushed his quirk to its absolute limits, and this brought about a new type of ability that he was able to utilize. We all saw just how powerful he was utilizing just the increase in speed and power utilizing the cluster ability, but now imagine if he had actually unlocked some sort of gear shift that was added into the ability and he was able to utilize this while utilizing the cluster ability, and this would give him a very good ability to kind of be very similar to Deku. If all of this sounds very weird, just hear me out for a second. We all saw just how easily he was able to speed blitz Shigaraki whenever he used his cluster ability, and it honestly was very reminiscent to when Deku started using the gear shift ability, how he was able to just move past Shigaraki and he wasn't even really able to react to anything that was going on. Now imagine if Bakugo has the ability to pull this out because of the fact that he is somehow using a sort of mutated version of the original second user's gear shift quirk, and this would make a lot of sense since quirk singularity is a thing, and we see that quirks have kind of stacked on top of each other to create different types of quirks or just very different quirks. So this could honestly be the case that is going forward with Bakugo, and he could have a sort of mutated quote-unquote version of the quirk that the second user had, and this could be why whenever he used the sort of cluster ability, it kind of maybe brought forth a little bit of the gear shift ability, and that's why he was able to just move so fast as he was able to against Shigaraki. I feel like this alone should give Bakugo the edge he needs to kind of be on par, or at least very similar to Deku in the fight against Shigaraki, and this would allow him to actually help out a little bit more in the fight and have both of them kind of tag team Shigaraki, and I would really appreciate that a lot more than Deku doing everything by himself right now. Along with possibly being able to speed himself up to the insane speeds, of course, using the gear shift ability from his own quirk, it would definitely give him a lot of strength boost also, since he'd be able to launch himself forwards with the explosions, and that would kind of give even more momentum to maybe a punch that has an explosion kind of in it. I think he could do something similar to that. Another thing I think he could kind of utilize right now in the story, if he was able to kind of access that version of the gear shift quirk that's kind of laying dormant maybe in his own quirk, is the ability to actually kind of control the speed at which his explosions explode. Now hear me out, I think what he could do is he could actually leave an explosion on a person or kind of have it activate on them, and it could actually be delayed to where he hits them, it doesn't do anything, but he actually leaves the explosion on them, and he can probably detonate it later or leave it on there for a bit, detonate it now, and he'd be able to freely manipulate and control when he wants these explosions to go off. So when an opponent least expects it, or in this situation when Shigaraki least expects it, he can actually activate that explosion, and it would be very catastrophic. Imagining Shigaraki trying to go in for an attack and getting hit with a very strong explosion from Bakugo, and this would very much throw him off severely during the fight. And of course, if you haven't really noticed it, this is very reminiscent to Killer Queen from JoJo, so I think it'd be very cool if Horikoshi did add some type of JoJo reference into My Hero. And of course, a lot of people are probably wondering how Bakugo's body is even going to be able to keep up with this increase in speed and energy being used by him, and I think that's where Edge Shot is going to come into play. We have to realize that right now he's essentially merging himself with Bakugo's body, and I'm pretty sure that's going to give Bakugo's body a sort of boost in endurance, strength, and kind of give him the leeway or the ability to actually withstand using the quirk, since we previously saw that when he did the cluster ability, it was kind of harming him when he was fighting against Shigaraki. But right now, I think that if he comes back with his body reinforced by Edge Shot, he's actually going to be able to better utilize the quirk and not actually kind of go down and out just from using it. I think it'll probably give him fatigue, then he probably won't be able to use that cluster ability so much, but I definitely do think he's going to actually have the ability to use it without just being decommissioned afterwards. I think this is a very smart way for Horikoshi to kind of throw in the fact that Bakugo's now going to have a kind of reinforced body that lets him do at least some of these similar stuff that Deku does, since Deku's body is obviously very different from any of his classmates just because he has all for one. But I feel like the fact that Edgeshot is kind of reinforcing Bakugo's body is going to give Bakugo the leeway he needs to finally kind of do any of the feats that Deku does. Obviously not on the same level, but I do think that Bakugo's going to be honestly one of the most comparable people to Deku in terms of strength after he comes back into the story. And we're also not 100% sure right now, but it does seem that there's going to be some type of healing factor added into the fact that Edgeshot is reinforcing Bakugo's body. So I'm assuming that whenever Bakugo does come back, he's going to be kind of at least partially healed. He's going to definitely be better than he is right now, and he's going to be reinforced. So this really does give us the perfect kind of transition into Bakugo becoming way stronger and utilizing that cluster ability, maybe mixed in with the gear shift. But even then, that cluster ability by itself was still able to kind of fight against Shigaraki. So I definitely do think that if Bakugo kind of more uses it, trains with it a bit more, and even right now in the fight, if he uses it more, he's definitely going to get more adept at using it, and it's going to be a very deadly ability to use against Shigaraki going forward in the fight. And I just so much so want him to be kind of the one person that's able to help Deku out. And we've seen this a lot of other times. We've seen this in the movies. We've seen it a lot where Bakugo and Deku kind of fight against the big bad enemies, but I do want to see Bakugo do this again at the end of the story, and I think that he's the most likely candidate to actually help out Deku in this situation, and I would very much want that to happen. And I want Horikoshi to kind of go down that route, have him get that reinforced body, become stronger, and actually be able to help out Deku in this situation. I think he definitely deserves this, and it would make a very good way to end off the story with both of them taking down the big bad evil of the entire storyline. And of course, like I was saying though, Bakugo is probably the one person in the story that deserves to be kind of put on the same caliber as Deku in this situation. I think it would be very poetic for him to fight alongside Deku at the end of the story and help him out against somebody of the level of Shigaraki and All For One fused together, but he definitely deserves this, and I feel like Horikoshi really is leading us to that conclusion, and I think it's going to be amazing. I think that if Bakugo does help out Deku and he does it in that way, it's going to be a very amazing way to end off the story. All in all though, Bakugo is definitely in for some major increases to his power, and I'm all for it, but is everybody else ready for that? With that being said, that's going to be the end of the video, and I do want to thank everybody for making it this far into the video, and I want to thank everybody for liking and subscribing and supporting the channel. It really does mean a lot to me, and you have no idea just how much it means for anybody to make it to the end of the video and to watch it all the way through. I really do appreciate that, and I do want to say, you know, if you're a new person here, definitely consider liking and subscribing, as we make a lot of content similar to this. I make a lot of videos based on certain mangas, and I do think that if you enjoyed this one, you should like and subscribe and come back to the channel. I really would appreciate it so much. Also, check out my socials, check out my TikTok and my Twitter. I'm going to put those in the top right corner. I do want to thank everybody for watching again, and I'm out. Peace.